Hello and welcome to Press TV News Analysis. I'm Kavakeb. It's called Bahrain's Security Court, in essence a military court which does not adhere to international law. This was the venue where a protester has been sentenced to death for allegedly killing a policeman, a court which has sentenced 13 doctors and nurses to 15 years in jail for treating wounded protesters. The crimes against the ruling family. In this edition of the News Analysis, we ask, as the U.S. remains silent, will Bahrainis succeed in the revolution? Let me introduce our guests. We have a Bahraini physician by the name of Dr. Nada Dhaif, who joins us on the phone from the capital, Manama. President of the Bahraini Medical Association, Osama Aradi, joins us from Detroit. From the Bahrain Justice and Development Movement, Dominic Kavakeb joins us from London. Rounding off the list, former University of Bahrain Assistant Professor Colin Cavell joins us from Austin. I'd like to thank all our guests. Let me introduce Dr. Nada Dhaif and set the precedent before we talk to her. She was one of the many doctors that actually set up a medical tent in the Pearl roundabout. She got arrested on the 21st of March after a nightly house raid, which then she was held incommunicado until she was released after more than a month on the 5th of May to be called for a military trial along with another of her co-workers amounting to 47 medical staff. Dr. Nada Dhaif, thanks so much for talking to us. Tell us about what you have experienced. Tell us what happened in terms of what you were doing at the Pearl Roundabout in terms of treating the wounded and the injured, and of course what followed after that.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me on your show. I was involved in setting the medical tent at the Lulu Roundabout, and it was purely a volunteer job. I wanted to make sure, as well as the rest of my colleagues who volunteered there, to the maximum number of people to get the medical attention they deserve. It was purely professional and humanitarian.
Tell us then what happened in terms of you being detained. What kind of charges were brought against you?
The charges I received, it was crimes against the state. The most serious one was occupying the public building, which is the Salmania Medical Hospital, with force, using weapons and controlling the outlets of the hospital. Another serious one is inciting of overthrow of the regime and spreading false news and hatred of the regime and other charges like stealing the equipment of and medication and transferring it to the Lulu Roundabout clinic.
So are these?
Those are the charges against me.
Are they valid?
Not at all. Not at all. First of all, I work in a private clinic, my own private clinic. I've always worked in private sector, never ever in the government, never ever in Salmania Medical Hospital. And I just find these charges ridiculous. There's no single evidence for those charges. And yet I was sentenced for 15 years. There's no single evidence provided against me. Even all the witnesses, the state witnesses, as well as the defense witnesses from the admin at the hospital and the admin at the ministry, they said, don't know her. She never came to the hospital. And still I was charged for that serious crime and sentenced.
Tell us what happened when they came. We understand the forces came, regime forces, into your house in the middle of the night and detained you. What ordeal did you go through at that moment? And then following that, what happened? Where did they take you? And if there was any type of abuse or torture?
Actually, I was detained on the 19th, not the 21st, early morning 19th. I was late. And Well, first of all, I didn't know they were security forces. They were just people in civilian clothes, armed. So I thought I was kidnapped. They came 3 a.m. in the morning, formed into my house, and I was taken blindfolded and handcuffed. And there was all the cars, they were civilian cars. There was no sign that they were not in their uniforms or anything. So I didn't know. And I was taken to unknown place. Later on, a week or 10 days later, I realized it was the Central Information Department, the CID in Adliya, the investigation department or something. That was later on. It's called the CID. There, immediately after I was taken or kidnapped, I would say, the mistreatment started with the beating, with the kicking, with the cursing, and to the extent that an electric device was used on my ears and my face. And
Okay, did I understand you correctly? You said you were shocked by, you were electrocuted, electric shocks were exercised on you?
Yes, exactly.
And while this was happening, what did you do?
Ear.
What did you say to them?
I don't know. I was in shock. I was crying, and I lost consciousness 3 or 4 times during that period. During 1 week, I lost consciousness. I was taken to the clinic, to their clinic, the military clinic they have there.
And you said it took about a week to 10 days before you understood what is going on. During this time, were you allowed A, visitation rights by your family members, and B, and maybe more importantly, access to lawyers?
Not at all. I was not allowed to call my family. I was called for 2 minutes. I was allowed to call my husband for a minute, and I was on speaker just to ask for clothes. I was not allowed to shower, bathe, or go to the bathroom for that long period. And it was a month later when I first talked with my kids, with my little girls. And my lawyer never, till the day of my release, I was not allowed for visitation or to contact my... No.
I understand this might be very hard for you to answer, but I'd like to ask you anyways, and if you feel uncomfortable, you don't need to answer, but the amount of, the way you were treated. You mentioned you were shocked or electrocuted. What other forms of abuse happened while you were in detention, or any other forms of abuse that you experienced?
Well, the verbal violation, they were cursing me, cursing my family, my religion. We're always all bad names, all based on sex, like Turkey and stuff like that. And I was threatened with rape if I don't just confess and sign on the papers, blindfolded.
Well, let me get a reaction. Stay with us there, Dr. Dhaif. Let me ask Osama Al-Aradi for a response. You just heard there, we're lucky enough to have this doctor with us who has just explained the ordeal that she has gone through. And of course, she's one of many. So, Osama Al-Aradi, what do you think, your reaction to what you just heard?
Yeah, thanks to Press TV, first of all, for this coverage. But, Dr. Nada is one of many others who had really suffered the brutality of this government. We know very well that, these physicians did their job, with the massive casualties that were rushed to Salmania Medical Center. And many of these physicians who've been tried today, basically they did their human duties, their work. They treated patients. I cannot describe how much of human rights were abused on those days, how much of a massive casualties and injuries took place. And these physicians were trying their best to cope with that amount of massive casualties and injuries. So basically they did their job. And what they are faced with is this massive brutality. They were arrested from the hospital, from their homes at early morning hours, and what happened is that those physicians, seeing this brutal casualties, that with open skulls, with direct live bullets, different types of injuries, they were shocked. Actually, everyone who looked at those types of injuries were really shocked. Anyone, and all the international organizations are well aware of that. We have many reports, we have many pictures, we have many videos of that. So they talked to the media at that time. Who in the world can hide these crimes? These were really crimes against humanity, and they talked to the media. So when they talked to the media, they exposed those crimes. Unfortunately, the government was not happy about it. So they went ahead and they basically arrested those physicians who are well known. These physicians have been working in the Ministry of Health for 15 years, for 20 years. They are consultants. They are highly professional and highly trained people, and they get arrested. They get punished because they did their duties.
And this
so
goes
back in March, when the wave of the
Right, and I was just going to indicate, this goes back to 7 months ago when this happened, and of course the Saudi-backed crackdown continues. Amnesty International has confirmed this as being ludicrous charges against civilian professionals who are working to save lives. So let me bring you in here, Dominic Kavakeb, and have your reaction of why 7 months ago these have occurred, more perhaps in terms of abductions, and of course now we have these military courts that are sentencing them to 15 years in prison.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a few months ago when the United Nations Human Rights High Commissioner said that the Bahrain government is carrying out a program of political persecutions, and these sentences that have been handed out today is absolutely another example of political persecution. As Amnesty said, as you said, they are absolutely ludicrous charges. 15 years for simply doing your job, doing your human job in helping injured people. And it's our position that these medical workers should be rewarded with medals, to be honest, for the amazing work that they did in helping injured protesters, rather than be receiving such, as we say, ludicrous jail sentences.
Colin, Cavell, why are doctors and nurses at the forefront of the government crackdown anyways? I mean, what is the government trying to send in terms of a message here?
I think it's something it's been trying to do for a long time.
Colin Cavell, let Colin Cavell come in. I'll get to you momentarily.
Tave, the Bahraini royal regime is an outlaw regime. They are going after doctors and nurses because they are easy prey. Every time the Bahraini regime does something this horrendous, this reprehensible, it's a black eye on U.S. foreign policy. We cannot appeal to the Bahraini regime because they are irrational. They have lost their rationale. In theoretical terms, as Hegel would say, they have ceased to exist because they are no longer rational.
When you talk about no longer
rational, and so they go after innocent people.
Colin Cavell, what perplexes me...
The Bahraini regime is irrational, Tave.
Colin Cavell, what is perplexing is the fact that they're targeting the medical profession, people who are helping the ones who are injured. What do they want? For doctors or nurses not to tend to people that they are injuring and wounding?
The central oath of medical professionals around the world, the Hippocratic Oath, says do no harm. Do not inquire into the political loyalties of people. You assist and provide medical care to friend and foe alike. That is exactly what the doctors and nurses in Bahrain were doing. The regime is saying, no, you are committing a crime for assisting, providing medical care to the protesters, those who were protesting the undemocratic nature of the Bahrain royal regime. This is a clear indication that the Bahraini royal regime has lost any type of morality, any type of rationality. It is irrational. In other words, what the U.S. is supporting in Bahrain today is a dead corpse. They're propping up a dead corpse. Or in American lingo, they're putting lipstick on a pig.
I mean, this is just one of many cases that I'm looking down a list of doctors. This particular woman, mother of one, who saw a 60-year-old man with part of his head blown away, changed her life. Then she had people, 30 masked men entering her house at 3 a.m., taking her away in front of her son. And of course, being physically and emotionally abused, blindfolded, and handcuffed, similar to what Dr. Dhaif, you have gone through. Dr. Dhaif, aside from what you have gone through, tell us about the movement, about the Bahrainis upon hearing your case and other cases similar to you. What does it make them feel? What do they feel at this point in terms of the revolution there?
Well, I can't speak about politics because I'm purely professional, but I see there's so much heat in the streets, so inflamed, and I see people, they're not accepting it. They look up to us as heroes, and hurting them that they're doing this to their doctors who stood for them and helped them. As your guest said, it's completely irrational. I don't know what will happen. It's like, I don't know, I'm completely speechless. But if you're living here in Manama, you would feel the heat. And the situation looks like it's about to explode.
And in many cases it has, because we see people going out on the streets time and again. We understand that you can't talk politics, as you mentioned, but you've been sentenced to 15 years. Can you repeal? What's going to happen in terms of when this sentence is going to take into effect? When will they come, or when do you have to submit yourself?
Well, I don't know, because now our files in the process of, they're transferring our files from the military court to the civilian court, and that should start by early next week. And we're not sure, maybe we will get an arrest warrant, but we passed the message that we are ready to submit ourselves, and we don't just to storm in our house and that horrifying drama again. I don't want my kids to do that again. It already scarred them. It will scar them for the rest of their lives. So I don't want it to happen again. I'm really willing to go by myself.
Is your family in immediate danger?
I think so, yes.
Okay, stay with us if you can, please. Let me go to Osama Aradi. You know, just this week before the United Nations, President Obama praised those whose fearless fight, such as this doctor, have led to the Arab Spring, in this case in Bahrain. Yet the U.S., in one of its actions on the ground, if you want to call it, is considering a proposed arms sale. It includes Humvees and missiles to Bahrain worth about $53 million. Tell us about the U.S. Lack of reaction, or the silence, as they have said, on Bahrain.
Yeah, it is it's so shameful, really, that the U.S. administration is taking that stance. It's not only dead silent on the human rights violations that are taking place there against the humanity, against people in Bahrain, against physicians, but to see, you know, a few days ago, we see a $53 million, support with weapons to Bahraini government is really, the only word that I can say is really ridiculous. This is not acceptable to Bahrainis at all. If you don't want to support Bahraini people, don't support the Bahraini government in oppressing its people. You know that the U.S. weapons there, with the one that are determined non-lethal weapons, including the tear gas, are being used against Bahrainis to die because of these weapons. So this is not acceptable at all. I really cannot explain it. I mean, we are trying our best here, being in the United States, to convey this to the officials here. That Bahrainis consider that the United States administration, and when I say administration here, I don't mean people, because I see people here, and when they hear about what's going on in Bahrain, they're really very supportive. And that's why the U.S. Congress, we are trying to to see if they are able to support Bahraini people. But the U.S. administration, unfortunately, is playing that role where it is showing full support. And
we're running really short on time. Let me bring in Dominic, Kavakeb. In terms of the U.S., more so since you're in London, what about the U.K. itself? After all, this island, they seem to think this Persian Gulf island, at one point anyways, was because of them, and now the biggest arms fair was just held a few weeks back. Bahrain was invited, along with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad. It's really sad to see that the Bahrain government seems to be able to do absolutely anything it wants, still seems to be able to have any economic ties that it wants to have with Western governments. And obviously, we are trying to do as much as we can here in London to try and change that, to try and bring some pressure. But I think ultimately the point is the people of Bahrain will continue to protest, will continue to fight for their rights, for democracy, whether or not they have support from Western powers. And I think that's something that we need to stress time and time again, because we've seen now this going on for over 7 months. And we've seen that the people every single night are coming out onto the streets to protest, despite the massive crackdown that's happening against them, despite the repression that's taking place on a daily basis. And I think that's something that we have to always remember, that even with or without foreign support, with or without Western governments, the people of Bahrain will keep fighting for democracy, and they will achieve it.
Colin, Cavell, last question to you. Briefly, if you can, protesters in Bahrain, they're saying the government has to go. The crimes are too big now. Do you think they'll be successful?
Tave, the situation in Bahrain is akin to the nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty, where it says, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty back together again. And that's what the State Department needs to understand in the United States. They cannot put Bahrain back like it was before February. Bahraini society has been torn asunder, and a new arrangement has to be made. And I believe the State Department is actually working on that, but they cannot be open about it because the Bahraini regime has to be displaced quickly and surgically.
If Saudi Arabia will let that happen. Thank you so much. That's former University of Bahrain assistant Professor Colin Cavell there with his statements. We want to thank Dr. Nada Dhaif. She was on the phone. She's the one who experienced, obviously, the ordeal that she did with her statements from the capital, Manama. Also, President of the Bahraini Medical Association, Osama Aradi. Thank you for your statements. Running off the list from the Bahrain Justice and Development Movement, Dominic Kavakeb from London with his statements. Of course, thank you, the viewer, for watching this edition of the Press TV News Analysis. Don't forget, any questions, comments, suggestions, send it to us, newsroom@presstv.ir. From me, Kavakeb, and the entire team, it's goodbye.